like to die.
911 emergency. The upper deck of the Bay Bridge has collapsed on Oakland side.
It's almost as if nature has just reached up and grabbed a hold of humanity and shaken them around.
The San Francisco Bay Area is as beautiful as any place. And this jewel had been put through the mill. And I didn't know how long it would take to recover.
October 17th, 1989 was really a wake-up call.
We live in earthquake country, on the ring of fire, a red zone of seismic activity that circles the Pacific Ocean. From time to time, with little or no warning, the earth beneath our feet rumbles and shudders. And sometimes shatters our world. The Great Quake and Fire of 1906 leveled most of San Francisco, reducing one of the great cities of the world to ash and ruin. In 1989, the earth in the Bay Area shook again, causing widespread damage and loss of life. What became known as the Loma Prieta earthquake collapsed homes and started fires. It brought down a section of the Bay Bridge, crippled downtown Santa Cruz, and crushed the Cypress Freeway in Oakland. We can't predict when the next major quake will strike the Bay Area, but that upheaval 30 years ago shows us what to expect and how we might survive.
There's a hell of an earthquake, and we've got windows and everything that's blowing out.
It was October 17th, 1989. A 6.9 magnitude earthquake killed 63 people and injured more than 3,000. The epicenter was in the Santa Cruz Mountains on a hilltop called Loma Prieta. The damage extended all the way to Marin County.
Loma Prieta is quite different. It's definitely occurred on a fault that's part of the San Andreas system, but it was a blind earthquake, which means that it didn't actually break all the way to the surface. And because of that, there's a certain amount of uncertainty about exactly which fault broke.
For baseball fans, October 1989 was one of the most exciting months in Bay Area sports history.
The Giants have won the pennant! And the Oakland A's have a return engagement in the World Series.
It was San Francisco versus Oakland, the first Bay Bridge World Series. Former Giants first baseman Will Clark.
Vibe was great. Both teams, Oakland and ourselves, had played really well that year, and there was a lot of build-up coming into that World Series. That hey, maybe it might be a Bay Bridge World Series. And sure enough, you know, both of us get there.
We zoom into Candlestick Park.
October 17th was a perfect day for baseball in San Francisco. The weather was warm and the skies were clear. The A's had won the first two games in the series. Sportscasters Tim McCarver and Al Michaels were on the air at 5 p.m. for Game 3.
Well, you don't often think of keeping...
4 minutes later, everything changed.
First thing I thought was that there were some kids in the upper deck just above us who were pounding bats on the concrete above us, the floor. And then we began to move a little bit, and Tim was trying to wrap up his segment, and I think I broke in at that point and said, I'll tell you what, we're having an earthquake.
Clark was on the field running wind sprints when he noticed something wasn't right.
It sounded like when the F-15s fly over, you know, big loud roar. And I looked up, and the first thing I saw was the light tower. The light tower was just going, and I was like, oh, this is not good.
The shaking lasted about 15 seconds, but Candlestick Park was still standing. After the initial shock, fans wanted the game to start.
One of the things I'll never forget is the crowd about 15 or 20 minutes later, not really understanding the extent of what had taken place, started chanting, "Play ball, play ball."
After everything sort of settled down, the fans started cheering like, "Yeah, welcome to San Francisco, you know, we're rocking now." Then, you know, on the flip side of things, a few minutes later, the radios are, you know, going pretty crazy.
Bay Bridge did collapse. Oh my goodness.
You know, the marina was on fire, the Bay Bridge had collapsed, the Nimitz had collapsed. I mean, the realization came today, look, this isn't about baseball anymore, it's about life.
Gentlemen, caller has been interrupted. The game has been called. Can you please leave the stadium in an orderly manner?
The game was canceled. When Al Michaels got back on the air, he stayed on for the next 12 hours, reporting the devastation and rescue efforts.
You get the sense that people are almost more nervous now.
A blimp became Michael's eye in the sky. He had lived in the Bay Area for 12 years.
Since I knew the Bay Area inside out, having lived there for a lot of years, so I knew exactly where that fire was. I mean, I think it said Cervantes Street. I felt one of the key things was to just say what I knew, get it right, and speculate.
For me personally, you know, my focus had shifted. Instead of being a ball player, now I'm a human being, and I'm trying to help out my fellow human beings. So we stayed here as a team and helped out.
It was a sad feeling is what it was. I felt terrible for just the whole area.
October 17th in the Bay Area was great weather. It was flat, still, calm, no wind.
In 1989, Tim Peterson was 24 years old and working for the Treasure Island Fire Department. On October 17th, Peterson was driving on Interstate 880. He was rushing to get back to the firehouse in time for the start of the baseball game.
For some reason, I am flying. I'm doing 70 miles an hour on areas that should be parking lots, you know, regular Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And I'm looking over and I remember seeing a woman in a brand new BMW. She was in that car, and there was a gardener guy, little Toyota pickup or whatever, and then wham! It was lights out. Everything went black. A little bit of a shake before, about 2-3 seconds, and then boom. Huge explosion. And that was the top deck of the freeway dropping down on us. And killed her, killed him.
Who's the emergency? Cypress section of the West Grand Freeway has come down. The Cypress structure has...
Peterson found himself trapped inside his crushed pickup truck.
And it was just down to like 24, 22 inches. Smashed completely down. In the very beginning, tons of screaming. The screaming went on for probably a half an hour. The other thing was the horns were blaring so loud, all their horns blared until the batteries died.
When rescue crews finally arrived, they were stunned. More than a mile of the upper deck of the Cypress Freeway had collapsed. 42 people died. Dozens more were trapped. 30 years ago, when natural disaster struck, the people of the Bay Area endured and prevailed. They were resilient.
It was a day that changed people's lives forever.
I think people felt, you know, hey, we got knocked down and we're back off the canvas. Here we go again.
The biggest thing was how the community came together. You know, watching, you know, strangers rescue people.
This kooky, avant-garde city with all of the diversity that is reflected in our city came together and showed that these terrible, disastrous days were really turning into our finest hour.
I think October 17th was the day that the Bay Area was ripped apart, and then it was also the moment that we realized we needed each other to come back together to keep going.
This is earthquake country. More earthquakes will happen. And survival may well depend on just how prepared you are.
How many people in the Bay Area are prepared not to take care of themselves for 3 days, but for a week or 2 weeks?